Hi, I'm Matthew Goldstein, Chancellor of the City University of New York, and welcome to a very special edition of CUNY Honors. You know, when you think about what great universities are about, you really reflect on two constituencies, the faculty and the students. And a university that is great, a university that is expansive, a university that makes important contributions, is defined by one that has a great faculty and a great and motivated student population. And one of the things that makes this university so great, in my mind, is that our very distinguished faculty work with our students, which is not something that you see as often as one would like in university life today. And tonight we have two examples of two very distinguished faculty and two examples of two very motivated and talented students. And all four are emblematic of that very basic theme of great distinction in a faculty and a relationship with the students that they care and nurture. So I'd like to start by first introducing, all the way to my left, Dr. Sheldon Wanbao. Dr. Wanbao is a CUNY Distinguished Professor of Mechanical and Biomedical Engineering at the City College of New York and at the Graduate School and University Center. Dr. Wanbao is one of 7 living individuals in the world today that are members of the National Academy of Sciences, the National Academy of Engineering, and the National Academy of Medicine. We are delighted to have him with us today and we celebrate the fact that he's been at City University almost his entire career. Welcome, Dr. Wanbao. Seated next to Dr. Wanbao is his student, Mia Thi. Mia is from Myanmar. That's a country that used to be called Burma. She came to the United States to City College to study engineering, and she was smitten by the world of biomedical engineering and has been working with Sheldon Wanbao and is soon to complete her PhD, and she'll talk to us about that in just a moment. Immediately to my right is Kevin A. Brown. Kevin is a student at Medgar Evers College, a very interesting and expansive young man. He was a Marine, he is a poet, he is an actor, he's a gifted writer, and he is going to be somebody all of you are going to hear about in the very near future when he wins all sorts of coveted prizes for his very distinguished work. And lastly is Elizabeth Nunez. Elizabeth Nunez is a distinguished professor at Medgar Evers College. She is a very accomplished writer, acclaimed author of 5 novels, and I've recently read one of her novels, Discretion. She has won more awards than I could recount tonight, but has been very, very involved not only in the intellectual growth of this university, but in mentoring students. So let me start with Shelley Wanbao. Shelley, talk to us very briefly about the field that you really are pioneering for the university and how you were able to get a youngster like Mia Thi involved in what it is that you're doing.
Well, biomedical engineering has been seen by many as the new revolution in the sciences and engineering. It's a marriage now not between, for example, physics and engineering or chemistry and engineering, but by the biological sciences and engineering. And it has 2 major components, one which we've been calling biotech, and the other one, which is the much broader term, biomedical engineering, which really has to do with many, many facets of the applications of medicine and biology and the human body treated as an engineering system, and also in terms of imaging and all the artificial implants that go into your body. So the field is one that has just mushroomed over the last 2 decades. And in fact, just this year, we have started a new department of biomedical engineering at City College. We've had a PhD program and a master's program, but the new undergraduate program just started, and it's the first new engineering department at City College since 1937. So that's a brief introduction to the field. Now, Mia and myself are, I guess, we're symbiotic in the sense that neither of us started out in this field. The field did not exist formally when I first got interested in it back in the 1960s. The first departments weren't formed until approximately 30 years ago. And Mia herself started out as an electrical engineer. She'll tell you more about herself, but I met her first as an undergraduate in my class on cell and tissue transport, which looks how various things move around your body, how your various molecules get distributed through your tissue, how the circulation, and various aspects of transport, both at whole organ level and at the cellular level. So that was the course where we met, and I just thought that this person was a natural for going on for a PhD, and I encouraged her strongly to do so.
That's great. We're going to speak to Mia in just a minute, but I'd like to ask Professor Nunez, how long have you been at the City University of New York, and what led you to come, and how did you start in your career as a gifted and great writer? Where did that all come from?
Well, I've been in the City University since 1972.
So you've been here a long time.
A very long time. And my professional career has been in the City University, and specifically at Medgar College. I'm sort of like youth in the sense that I didn't necessarily first think that either I would be a professor or that I would be a novelist, although I wanted to do both. I wanted to write, I wanted to teach, but I didn't see that as a future for women. There were few models I had, few possibilities that I could in fact do that. But I came to Medgar College. I was fortunate enough to get a position as an instructor and worked my way up to full professor, writing academic and scholarly articles. And then in 1983, a remarkable man came to Medgar College, and that was John Oliver Killins, the African-American novelist. And I said to him, you know, I always wanted to be a novelist. And he says, well, I'm giving a class here. And so on Saturdays, I became a student. During the week, I was a professor at Medgar College, and on Saturdays, I came into class with the other students and began writing. And here I am, many years later, with my 5th novel published actually this month, and my 6th that I'm working on right now, but which I have under contract. It's been also with John Oliver Killins. We co-founded the National Black Writers Conference, which has been by a lot of, Ishmael Reed describes it as the premier conference of its kind in the country, if not in the world. We bring together at Medgar College, you cannot think of a major black writer or critic that we haven't brought. I mean, we opened with Maya Angelou, for example, and Margaret Walker, and we've had Derek Walcott and Henry Louis Gates and Arnold Rampersad and Alice Walker. We've had all the major writers and had 5 grants from the National Endowment for the Humanities for this major conference. And then, my first love has always been teaching. I don't know what to say, whether to say my first love is teaching or writing, because I just really love them both. And I think it was about 11 years ago, Kevin was in my class, in my composition class. And right away, I knew that this was a very talented person. He'll tell you that our history doesn't move that smoothly. Like too many students who come to Medgar College, they begin at the college steadily, and then something causes them to make a break, but the faculty stay on them. And Kevin will say to you that there was no way I was going to let this young man get away, this talent slip away. And so we found a way to bring him back to Medgar, and happily, this June, he will graduate with his degree and honors in English.
You know, it's wonderful. Here we have two very distinguished members of our faculty, and both of you have spent the best part of your careers for over 30 years, both at the City University of New York, both being extraordinarily productive, and both so engaging with students. That's not a model that typically we see in higher education, and we're going to have to get into that in a little more in just a minute. Let me get back to Mia. Mia, you're finishing your PhD. That's quite an accomplishment, and in a field that is very, very complex. Could you talk a little about your work and how you were motivated by Professor Wanbao to get where you are today?
Yes. While I was taking his class, he always motivated us to think. He has always apply his engineering skills toward this biomedical, cellular level models and stuff. So it's very fascinating for me. And so, I then he approached me whether I would like to study, to graduate study with him, and it was a great honor for me, the one that I couldn't resist. And so then, since my background was engineering, electrical engineering, and I'm jumping into totally new, different field. Plus, I did the internship, summer internship at a hospital for special surgery. That's another motivation for me to get a hands-on experience on biomedical engineering. Both together with that, I started with him, and the focus of my study is the cellular communication, how cells communicate under mechanical load or pressure or fluid shear stress, especially. So that's the research that I'm focusing on in bone cell and in endothelial cells that lines to the blood vessels, and what's the outcome.
Professor Wanbao tells me that you're going to be finishing your dissertation probably in the next few months.
Yes.
Write it up and defend it, and I'm sure we're all going to be very proud of you. What's in store for Mia Thing next? What does she want to do after she finishes school?
I'm going for a postdoc experience. From then on, right now I'm thinking about two options. I want to get some, hands-on experience on biotech, and I want to teach. Right now, I want to go into academics. So, I haven't decided yet what I want to do, but I will do my postdoc.
Do you have a place that you've chosen to do a postdoc?
Not yet. I'm so occupied.
Somehow Professor Mia Thee sounds very lyrical to me. We look forward to great things from you. Kevin.
Yes, sir.
Accomplished poet, ex-Marine, actor, writer. You have an anthology of poems already that I understand. Derek Walcott. Didn't Derek Walcott read the poems and was very impressed with them?
Yes, yes.
You're an interesting guy. You're really an interesting guy. How did your relationship with Medgar Evers start? You were from Trinidad, if I recall.
That's correct.
And you needed to make a decision where you were going to go with your life. And how did Medgar Evers come into the equation?
Well, when I came out of the Marine Corps, my cousin suggested that I go to college, get some sort of a college education. I really hadn't intended to do anything important. I just wanted to relax, but he kept on pushing me. So I decided on John Jay College initially. But he said, well, suppose you don't want to be a lawyer or you don't want to go into the criminal justice field later on in your life, you'd be kind of stuck. So I said, well, what are my options? Either don't go to college or go to John Jay and make a decision later on. He said, well, why don't you do a non-degree program at Medgar Evers College? And when you finally decide, you can matriculate and get into a higher degree. So I went into Medgar College on the non-degree program. I did 1 semester non-degree. And then I decided with the rich community, the rich Caribbean community at Medgar College, based in Crown Heights, that it was a place where I could heal spiritually, emotionally, after having come out of the Marine Corps, and develop academically. So I stayed there. I started off as a business major, but but if you asked anybody, it's only because I liked money and spending it. But I had no real interest in business. I met Dr. Nunez when I had to take an upper level literature class in Masterpieces of World Literature, and I was advised against taking her class because she was so difficult and she expects so much, and with the residual effects of the Marine Corps still in me, I decided, well, I had to have the challenge. So I went in gung-ho, and it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. She literally changed my life. And what's funny about it is that that was only the academic side. As far as artistically, I only found out later on that she was a novelist, or that she is a novelist. And I took a creative writing class with her. I wrote a manuscript. She said it was okay, but not really what I was capable of, so I ripped it up and I started all over. So she pegged me as melodramatic, all right? So I'm in her melodramatic folder, all right? But I was more interested in poetry, always more interested in poetry. From a very young age, I knew that I would be a writer, that my concern would be the human condition, that my concern would be art and trying to express it in words. And although Dr. Nunez herself is not a poet, her ethical approach to art, her ethical approach to writing, her artistic integrity has helped me develop as a person, which is what I would need to be before becoming a poet and before being able to express myself properly.
You know, Billy Collins is the U.S. Poet Laureate, and he's a member of the Lehman College faculty, which is part of the City University of New York. And April is Poetry Month.
Yes.
In New York City, maybe in the United States, I'm not sure. And Mayor Bloomberg and a number of our poets, and we have many wonderful poets on our faculty, are going to be doing a series of readings this month. And I would hope, Kevin, that we can get you to read some of your poetry.
I would be honored.
Well, let's make the commitment to do that.
Okay, that would be wonderful.
Tell me a little about what inspires you to write poetry. I mean, what is it that? Why is it that poetry is a medium for you for expressing your emotional self in very special ways?
Well, for a very long time, I've had a love affair with words. I've loved words, expressing them succinctly, and just in a very short. Just as an emotion is brought out, I would like to express it. You know, an emotion for me isn't long, but very brief in coming and very brief in going as well. Most of my poetry is inspired by Trinidad, my country, and the Caribbean, because I was born into a post-colonial culture, and that leads me to a post-colonial literature as well. So I would write about Trinidad, I would write about the effects of colonialism, the effects on people of color in the Caribbean, the issues of race, gender, classicism, and so on. Most of my poetry does have some romanticism to it, but it's not too much romance. I try not to deal with too much sentimentality, because when speaking to Derek Walcott, he said of one of my pieces, "Oh, this is very sentimental," and he frowned. So I decided no more sentimentality for me, right? And since then, I've been trying to keep my work as clean and tight as possible. And I find if I express myself like in the longer poems, like 2 or 3 page poems, I start getting overly nostalgic, and that leads to too much sentimentality.
You didn't happen to bring a poem with you tonight that you wrote, did you?
No.
You don't have one in your pocket that you can pull out? Oh, well, I should have arranged for that. We would have, I'm sure, our students and our audience would love to have heard one of your poems. So we're going to find a way to get you to read during this month when CUNY displays itself in very special ways.
Thank you very much.
Mia, passion. In order to do great work, you have to have great passion. Certainly when you listen to Kevin about his work, passion just jumps off the page. I have the sense that that's the same for you as well. I mean, getting into the laboratory, working with Professor Wanbao, there has to be a real motivating passion to do good work. Talk a little about that. Do you love what you're doing? Are you
Also
excited
being a
about
mother.
it?
And she's a mother too.
And you're a mother
Yes,
too.
yes.
My goodness, how old are your children? Do you have one child? Or?
Yeah, one child.
And
One,
how-
yes.
One, and
Yeah,
that
she-
must be very hard to.
Yeah, she's going to be 3 next month.
What's her name?
Megan.
Megan.
Yes.
Isn't that wonderful? Talk about, talk about what you love about what it is that you're doing. Why are you so drawn to this very difficult, the words are even hard to pronounce. What is it about the subject that brings your passion out?
Great results.
Great result. Like
Yeah.
what does a great result mean?
Well, you have this hypothesis, then you have to run the test. So you have this idea that, if you do this, the outcome might be, such and such. And, you put that in mind, and then, maybe the outcome might be different. You don't know. So you try doing some experiment, for me with the mechanical shear stress flow on the cell, and then later on analyze the results, whether it's whatever we hypothesize or the different, and to interpret the results that we got. It's exciting. Maybe, maybe we're heading in the wrong direction. Maybe we should do this, and we do that from discussion. It's the motivation.
A great tennis player will tell you that the racket is really an extension of their arm.
Yeah. Mhm.
Is Kevin an extension
Of my arm.
well, not your arm, your being as a writer, a creative force? Do you see him as part of the creative force that you have to have as a great novelist? And
Kevin was I want to say one of my more exciting adventures in teaching, but first I just to piggyback a little bit on the question you asked, why have we been in the City University for so long at Medgar, in my case, is because we just love what we do, and it's such an exciting place to teach, and the kind of students that I meet there, and Kevin is one. And what's incredible for me about that is that it's first the recognition of the talent. And at the same time that I recognize the talent, I know that it could slip away, that I have a chance, that I've been presented with an opportunity at the City University. I have a chance to take this talent and put it on the right road. And if I put it on the right road, that talent would explode. And we get frightened. We get frightened because of all the reasons why, particularly at Medgar College, why our students could slip away. And actually, in the case of Kevin, he did slip away. I think for how many years, Kevin?
6.
Yeah, for 6 years. He dropped out of Medgar College. And, this is what we do as faculty. We keep some kind of connection with our students, some kind of relationship, because we can't let that talent go. We have to bring it back. And so, when Kevin came back to Medgar, everybody in the English department was there for him. Everybody, I just told the various faculty, Kevin is back. And there was just that kind of support. And because, I really thought about having him bring his poetry, because he is an incredible poet. His images are extraordinary. What he does, as he says, he writes in sort of terse language, but he also writes very, very long poems too. And they take your breath away. And I think it took Derek Walcott's breath away when he read it. And I have a friend who runs the Literary Arts magazine in Jamaica. And I said to him, I want to send you my students' work. And he says, don't send it to me, because you're not going to like what I say. And most people, when I send their work and I criticize it, they don't like it. I said, no, I really want. He wrote me back and he said, you have a really talented person. And I think he's published about 5 or 6 of your poems. Yeah, he's published his poems. So Kevin is a published poet. And so it's extraordinary for me to know that this June, Kevin is going to graduate. with a degree in English, and it's also extraordinary for me to know that I had a colleague at Medgavas who went on to Syracuse and is now head of the English department at Penn. And I've told him about Kevin, and he's been talking to Kevin, and there's
Send them to us, right?
absolutely right there in the future where Kevin will have a PhD in English, and I hope come back to Medgavas to teach as well as to be a distinguished poet.
You know, it's wonderful to engage you, Professor Nunez, as a very accomplished scholar, novelist, that typically people who are operating in the very creative echelons of the academy really are just mainly focused on their own work, their very personal work. But to hear you with the same kind of joy, the joy in your voice about nurturing this fabulous young man who's going to do things is a very, very special thing that I think all of us in university life should celebrate, and I compliment you for
Thank
that.
you.
Shelley Wanbao, National Academy of Engineering, National Academy of Sciences, National Academy of Medicine. As I said earlier, there are only 7 of you, 7 in the entire world. We're not talking New York City or New York State, the United States. There are 7 of you. You could go anywhere. Every university in the United States would love to have Professor Shelley Wanbao. Why is it that City College is such an attractor for you, and you continue to stay and work as hard and productively over all of these years? What is it about this university and this college? My alma mater, by the way.
Well, I have a very special history with City College, though I was never a student there myself. But my reason for coming to City College and why I have stayed now 36 years are really quite different. When I first came to City College in 1967, I thought City College and CUNY would develop much like the Berkeley system in California. The college was so famous for having so many of its students go on for PhDs, and I thought that was imminent. But there was another, even more important component here, and that was what I believed politically. I was active in the anti-war movement, and I had left industry. Took about a 40% pay cut to come as a faculty member to the university back in 1967. And I immediately got involved in the social upheaval back in the late 60s at CUNY. And I felt very, very strongly about the diversity of the university and what could be done, especially with City College in the middle of Harlem. So that was an underlying force for why I stayed. And I guess the other turning point for me, of course I had been approached by many, many universities over the years, is I guess was 1976 when free tuition ended, and that I was arrested at the Emergency Financial Control Board at that time and was very active in that protest. And after that juncture, I knew that this was going to be my home, really, as long as I stayed in academia. And for me, the important thing is to have an integrity of what I believe politically and my work. And so while I was in aerophysics at the beginning of my career, looking at fluids in space, I decided pretty early on that was much better to look at how things were moving in your body and to try to do something that was much more useful. And that's, and when I look at Mia, I think, first of all, I should say that even though I'm primarily a researcher, my greatest love is actually dealing with undergraduates while they're undergraduates if I have to teach. I feel I'm a very good PhD mentor, and I love doing that, but to actually be in the classroom with young people that haven't been that really are at the beginning of thinking scientifically is, in a way, more rewarding. So I always will choose to teach an undergraduate course if I can. And seeing Mia in my class, it was, what struck me was first that she came from a field where she had no background in this area. So it was like myself, having been an aerophysicist. And so I saw that possibility of transformation. And then there were things about her which I didn't know, but I found out very quickly afterwards, because she didn't tell you about her experience at Hospital for Special Surgery, but it was people there, and I'm not an experimentalist, so, and her thesis is primarily experimental. She works with a very prominent person that works in an area called gap junctions at Albert Einstein. And at Hospital for Special Surgery, she was doing also cellular techniques, and they told me she was just very gifted at experiments, that she could do experiments in a space of a few months that they had people try for several years, where they couldn't get the experiments to work out. And I think when you asked about her passion, I think she should tell you more about that. But there's such an excitement, I think, when you just imagine the way something's going to happen, and there's so many possibilities of way cells could work, or what could happen in an experiment, and then you turn out to be right. And a lot of these notions are very whimsical. I mean, that's sort of my trademark. I have whimsical ideas that may seem very, very far-fetched, and then you turn out to be true. And sometimes, since I'm a theoretical modeler, it could take 10 years for the experiments to be done to show that an idea or a concept is right. And she's looking into some of those, proving those ideas experimentally. That's what she does up at
What I'm fascinated
Einstein.
about is that these are very different fields, the four of you involved in, but yet your vocabulary is really so very much alike. We're going to take a break at this point. We have representation from the new CUNY Honors College in our audience today, and I know a number of you are anxious to ask questions of our guest today, so stay with us. We'll be back in just a moment. We want to have a few statements about the City University of New York. We'll be right back. Thank you.
CUNY offers a range of educational options, whether you're interested in a senior college or a community college, a certificate program, or a graduate degree. You should contact CUNY's Office of Admission Services at 1-800-CUNY-YES or visit our website, cuny.edu.
Hello, I'm Billy Collins, here to talk to you about poetry. April is National Poetry Month. Poetry not only brings together words and emotion, thought and feeling, the local and the universal, it also brings people together, reader and poet, then reader and reader, all finding a common ground. Read a poem this month, share it with family and friends, and do something you can't do with a painting or a piano. Carry a poem in your pocket.
Welcome back to CUNY Honors. I'm Matthew Goldstein, the Chancellor of the City University of New York. We are here tonight with Professor Sheldon Wanbao, Miss Mia Thee, Kevin Brown, and Professor Elizabeth Nunez. We're going to take questions now from the audience, and we're going to start with you. You tell us your name and where you're from.
Hi, my name is Irina Slutsker. I'm studying economics at Baruch College. I started out being interested in engineering, but eventually switched over to economics. My question is to Professor Wanbao. What inspired you to pursue your interests in your field, and what advice would you have to students other than Mia that are willing to pursue these interests?
Well, I have to tell you that I think, even for myself, it involved a long period of trial and error. I grew up during the Sputnik period, and so aerospace engineering seemed to be the thing at the time. But I think that's not a good way of looking at it when, just because a field is very popular. I think a field, what you do has to be much more integrated into what you are as a person, and that is not necessarily what the fad is at the time. And I also, virtually all my immediate family are in the humanities. My wife is got her PhD in history. My son is interested in creative writing, and he's a student at Hunter College right now in the master's program. My daughter is an English professor. And my brother went to City College, and he also was a historian, and worked for many years at the Immigration Museum at the Statue of Liberty. So I'm surrounded by people in the humanities. And I think that is one of the things that really transformed me as a scientist, why I left aerospace, for example, and went into working in biomedical engineering. So it's not surprising to me that you ask a question like that, and you could be changing what you're doing very easily. I'll also tell you that after I finished my PhD thesis, I never worked in that area again. So I started on an entirely new path after even finishing my PhD dissertation.
You're not alone in that regard. There are a lot of us like that.
Yeah.
That's great. Yes, who's the next questioner? Yes, sorry.
Hi, my name is Leora Tansman, and I go to Queens College. And my question is for Kevin, and I was wondering if your 6 years away from college, I believe it was 6,
Yes.
affected your poetry, and how?
Certainly it affected my poetry. I didn't think I was any good when I was in school the first time. I think it was only Dr. Nunez and other members of the faculty who saw any sort of talent in me. I was going through, I suppose, the beginnings of the required depression period for a writer, but I didn't think I was that good. During the 6 years, I delved into spoken word poetry, so I used to perform on the hip-hop performance poetry circuit at New Eureka and then Brooklyn Moon Cafe and so on. I did a one-man show that I sort of wrote and used to perform in Brooklyn and in the city as well. I also did some traveling. I've been to the West Coast a couple of times. I went back to Trinidad. And to have my experiences just sort of broaden or widen themselves out allowed me the ability to see how things change over time. I came back to school with a different sensibility and a different sensitivity, thinking that I had experienced something more than the college experience. I've read more books and understood and learned more poetry in living and in losing quite a bit, in failing quite a bit, than I would have in a classroom. It's quite different to learn about modern classics or learn about modern poetry, even contemporary poetry, if you have not yet at least lived one of the experiences that they're trying to express to you. You know, there's something to be said about vicarious living through poetry, but to a certain point you have to fail. You have to experience that failure. By experiencing that failure, by experiencing that loss, and even the joy, you know, or the great things about poetry, by experiencing that, you would more be able to appreciate it. You'd be able to feel really the passion with which it was written. So it wouldn't be a search for the passion. It wouldn't be a study of the words. It would be a sympathy, because you would be feeling it as well. It wouldn't be a distance from the work. So definitely the 6 years, I don't think I could have done any more than 6 years because I would not have gone back to school at all. But the 6 years were not wasted, not in any way, by living. because that's what poetry is. Poetry is life. You know, poetry, I think, in my defense of poetry, is the pulse of humanity. And I think it sounds fairly poetic, but that's what I think. You know, I was talking to a friend of mine last night, and she said, don't you feel awkward when people ask you, how come you're 29 years of age? Well, I'm about to be 29. And you're not married, you don't have things that your friends have, which are family, house, car, dog, money, you know. And although I did have a dog, I had to put him away because I moved. But that's a whole other story and a whole other poem. But I got defensive initially because it's very difficult for someone to ask you, why are you the way you are? And it's very difficult to answer because I can't say I'm the way I am because ... So we started arguing for a bit, and then I realized that the only answer I could give her was that I'm a poet. That's it. That's all it is. My life, unfortunately, may not be the poem, but Dr. Nunez told me one time that writers write not from fullness, but from a lack of it. See? So I figure that the emptier I am, the more ability I have to fill something else. So the less people I have in my life, apparently, makes me a wonderful poet. You know, it's sort of sad, but it's a sadness that you deal with and you come to accept. So the 6 years, definitely, but life goes on even while I'm in school. So I would encourage you to remember that there is life as well outside of the classroom, outside of the gated communities that we call colleges. So keep one eye on the street, you know. All right?
Thank you.
That's
You're
great,
welcome.
Keevan. Yes.
Okay. Hello, my name is Aigul Bogodinova and I'm from Baruch College. And my question is for Mia. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your day, like your regular lifestyle, being a mother and working on your PhD. How do you manage your time?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, it's tough, but you know, it's a great motivation to usually, you know, since all my work is theoretical, so you know, I can't work from home. So I have to be in the lab. Usually I get up early. I'm in the lab usually 7 already, and I work from 7 till 4:30, because I have to get home by 6 in order for my nanny to go home. So yeah, that's basically it. And you know, having a kid, well, one thing is because my husband's working, so I don't have to worry about financial situation that, you know, he can support. But you know, studying also, you have to make your time. You can't waste any time, because with the kid running around at home, you can't do anything by the time you get home, because you know, she's going to take over. And so, you know, everything I have to do, you know, plan ahead, do, you know, whatever you plan to do in the lab, library.
Is your husband very supportive of
Yes.
your work?
Yes.
Proud of you?
Yes.
Gives you the time that you need to...
Oh, yes. Yeah, so far, yeah.
He's on television. You
There are
expect
good
him to
husbands
say-
out there.
No, I have to give him a credit. Yes, he's a very encouraging, you know.
Also a CUNY, past CUNY student.
Yeah,
Is
he
he?
graduated
What-
from Queens College.
And what did he study?
He's in computer science, so he graduated with computer science.
That's
So
great.
he's a, you know, software developer.
Does he do any of the computer work for you, or assist you in any of the simulations that you may have to do, or data analysis, or?
Not yet. He's dying to do it, but you know.
That's
Not
great.
yet.
It's good that he's dying to do it. You want to take him up on it. Yes.
Hi, my name is Arti Brijlal. I'm at Hunter College studying political science, but English and writing are my foremost passions. And actually my question is directed to Mr. Keevan Brown. And my passion is kind of latent because of all the schoolwork that I have to do. So I'm just wondering if you could suggest a way in which academics can be reconciled with pursuing your passions, especially through poetry and the literary arts. Is there a way to to focus on poetry while also?
That's an excellent question. I would say that there are two answers to that. One, there's no real reconciliation. So you have to pretend that there is, right? And since you're a creative writer, it becomes possible at a certain point. What I do, since I've returned to school, I've been in school for about 3 semesters, this being my 3rd, I haven't written a poem since I came back. So that was October, September, January, whenever the semester starts, all right? 3 semesters ago, not a single poem, not a single line. I've been extremely sad about it, but I convinced myself that in order for me to become a professor of English, I need my degrees. In order for me to teach post-colonial poetry and post-colonial literature, these are required. These are the credentials required in order to do these things.
But you have been writing.
No, I have.
You wrote 2 stories.
Well, the stories, but those were for your classes.
But you were very excited. No, he was very excited about those 2 stories, and they were poetic.
I was excited about the stories, but if left up to me alone, or if it had not been for a class, I would not have written because I was so focused on these classes. You know, I knew that the time off made me a little bit more mature, so my return to school would have been taken less seriously. Classes would have been taken a little less seriously, so I had to buckle down. I had to batten down the hatches and focus on these classes that I had to take. So I took like about 5 English classes last semester, which was insane. I'm still recovering, right? But I convinced myself simply that in order to do one, I have to achieve the other. You know, poetry is my life. So I'm a poet as much as I'm a black man. So that is something that I cannot escape. If I stop writing for a year or 2 years or 10 years, it makes me no less a poet. It's just taking back up what it is you put down, as heavy as it may be, to continue. You know, taking the time to say, okay, let me breathe for a minute, let me have a glass of wine, and am I a poet? Am I a writer? Am I a novelist? Am I an essayist? And if the answer is yes, it doesn't matter if a decade has passed. The answer will always be yes. So don't worry about reconciling the two. They're oil and water, quite frankly.
Actually, I'm from Trinidad also, and I just recently went back there. And your point about taking 6 years away from school actually reminded me of how I want to pursue poetry, especially through the immigrant experience.
Exactly.
And I took that break off to do that.
Okay.
So I'm looking forward to reading your poetry.
Well, I'm looking forward to having you read it. Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Michelle Bauer and I go to Lehman College. This is a question for either one of the writers. I'm possibly going to be a writer and I want to know what advice can you give to future writers who wish to be successful and hopefully rich?
You want to be rich too.
Well, since you're successful and rich,
You may have started. You may want to start as Kevin did and go into business first and make your money. But
Read. Read, read, read. You cannot be a writer unless you are well-read. I tell my students that next to my bed are a stack of books. They go down, they come back up. They go down, they come back up. I read constantly. I read eating, I eat reading. The writer has to fill his or her head with the language of literature, the images, and I get nervous when you add that second part, I want to get rich. It's not at all my motivation as a writer. I think anything you do well, you're going to succeed. If you focus on something that you love, that you're passionate about, and you persist and you persevere and you do it well, it will bring its rewards. And among its rewards would be money. And to tell you the truth, you reach a point where that isn't, I mean, certainly I probably wouldn't turn down my nose if someone offered me millions of dollars for my book. But that is nowhere the reward in writing. It's just the thrill of getting what's in your head and it's never completely satisfactory, because what's on the page is just not exactly what you had in your head. So you try again, and you try again, and you try again. And that magic is all the reward. Writing a good sentence is, it's pleasurable, gives you pleasure for a long time. But I would say my advice for someone who wants to be a writer is, above all, it's to read. You must become a reader. Cannot be a writer without being a reader.
Kevin, do you have anything to add to that? Or?
Well, I don't know about the rich part at all, because I am broke. Plus, I'm a poet, so it's a requirement as a poet. You need to be broke and poor. But you have to read, definitely. I mean, I would definitely repeat what Dr. Nunez said, because it can't be underestimated. Also, if you're intending on being a poet, write. You must write. And it may sound a little funny, but the truth is, in order to get used to using words, you have to get used to not wasting them. And that's one of the problems that I used to have. Or I probably still have it, because every piece has to be taken letter by letter, word by word, line by line. And by the time you get to the end and you figure out that you haven't wasted anything, that's when you get to as close to being finished with a poem as you could possibly be. It doesn't get any more perfect than that, because that would make you perfect. And since we're not, we have to write, you see. So it's an interesting little paradox that we play with in our heads. But read, and read more than you write. Because if you write prolifically, chances are you're going to repeat yourself, and nothing is going to be learned, neither by you nor by your reader. Nothing is going to be shared likewise. So you try to read more than you write, so you get more than you give. So when you give a proper economy. And when you give what's filtered through and what lasts, you see?
It's very profound.
That is a very profound answer.
I'm very proud of him here.
Mia, do you read a lot of the literature? Are you able to stay up with the literature? You're in a very dynamic field, and it's changing very, very rapidly, and an awful lot of new research is being developed each day. Do you find, with being a mother, being a wife, being a full-time graduate student, that you have time to keep up with the evolving changes in your field by reading and reading and reading?
Yes.
You do?
Yes. So whenever doing experiment, you don't have to be constantly, right next to the setup. Also, you have time, 5-10 minutes here, you do the literature search, and whenever you have breaks, you read.
There's more than that, I have to say, intercede here, because Mia has really become a cell biologist. And
So you have to read other literature.
that's right. It's basically having learned a whole new world that she knew nothing about, 5 years ago.
And you're in a field that really integrates lots of different disciplines.
That is the major attraction of this particular area. That it's at the crossroads of a lot of disciplines and many areas, because the human body is electrical, it's chemical, it's fluid. There's so many different facets to it, and that's the fascination. And so you can't be just a specialist. So,
Question, yes, in the back.
I'm Charity Hoffman from Queens College, and I was just wondering, for either or both of the professors, you've had thousands of students over the years, I would guess, and I'm just curious, how do you choose which ones to focus your attention on, which ones to invest your time in, since you obviously can't do all of them?
And I'll let you go first.
well, I'm going to tell you just a very brief story. Some students stand out for very, very unusual and different reasons. I had one black woman student who came to my class and was seldom prepared and often was falling asleep. I asked her to come to my classroom afterwards, and I found out she was driving a taxi 40 hours at night. She was a very bright student who had gone to Bronx High School of Science and had left Howard University because her mother had lost her job, and she also had to support her family. Now, that's a great thing when you discover a student like that. That comes from, like, out of the blue. And I'm sad that I haven't kept in touch with this student. She graduated. I know she did a number of things after leaving City College. For my PhD students, by the way, it's very different. They're like your family. I've had about 40 of them now. And I know where most of them are. And they're like a second set of children. And you're very proud of not what they do with you, you're proud of what they do when they're on their own after they leave you.
Professor Nunez, you
actually, I have a
last
love
comment.
affair. I have a love affair with my students. I actually fall in love with my students in my classes. I love their work. I love watching them improve. You know, it's just a miracle that happens. You know, when they come in the class at the beginning, to move them from there to the end of the semester and to see them get stronger. And I always say that in the 30 years that I'm teaching, I cannot go anywhere in the city without meeting a graduate of Medgav. I was looking for a house actually. I was house hunting, and this young man came up to me and said, "Hi, Dr. Nunez." Turns out he is graduating from Downstate Medical this year, and he was a student in English. So it's a joy.
Ladies and gentlemen, we could go on for several hours. This was a very, very special show. Thank you, Professor Wanbao. Thank you, Mia Thee. Thank you, Kevin Brown. Thank you, Professor Nunez. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the CUNY Honors College. We look forward to seeing all of you at our next show, and thank you for being with us this evening.